Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Planning Committee today, the 31st of March. My name is Councillor Catherine Lawrence and I am the Planning Committee Chairman. This meeting is being web streamed to the public and is being attended by members of the committee through Microsoft Teams. With me I have the support of the following officers: Richard Holt, our Head of Planning and Enforcement, Sarah Chapman, our Legal Advisor, Claire Wallachek and Veronica Beckover from Democratic Services. I have Stephanie Gibray, who is our Head of Growth and Investment, and our planning officers tonight are Maxine Simmons, Erica Buchanan, Nathan Loud and Chris Kingham, Lisa Lee and Karen McCulloch. We also have with us tonight from Warwickshire County Council, Janet Neal, Joanne Archer and Nick Dauncey. Before we begin working through the agenda, I'll go through some rules on procedure. As set out in our introduction, this meeting is being web streamed to the public. This is being monitored by IT services. If at any point there are any streaming issues, then I will be informed and the meeting will be adjourned until such time that the technological issues can be resolved. If during the course of the meeting any member of the committee is having connection issues, then there will be a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the connection issues can be resolved. If following the adjournment the connection issues cannot be resolved, then providing the meeting remains quorate, it will continue. It will be deemed that that member with connection issues has left the meeting and will no longer be able to participate. If it is my line that goes down, then the Vice Chair will take over. For all officers and speakers, will you please switch off your microphones and cameras, and I will call you to speak at appropriate times. For committee members, your microphones and cameras should be switched off unless you are speaking. If you wish to ask a question on the officer's report during debate, please use the raised hand function and wait for me to ask you to speak. Voting during virtual meetings will use the raise hand function, apart from one councillor who will be doing a verbal vote this evening. Are there any questions before we move into the formal agenda? I will now ask our Democratic Services Officer to confirm the attendees at this meeting. Your name will be called out. Can you please confirm your attendance by saying present?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mrs. Brown?
Present.
Councillor Kieran Brown?
Present.
Councillor Batlin?
Present.
Councillor Cranham?
Present.
Councillor Eccleston?
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Garcia?
Yes, she is joining us.
Councillor Gilias?
Present.
Councillor Ms. Lawrence?
Yes, present.
Councillor Picker?
Present.
Councillor Roodhouse?
Present.
Councillor Sanderson?
Present.
Councillor Srivastava?
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Right, we'll now move on to the formal agenda. Agenda item 1 are the minutes to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of February 2021. All those in favour, will you please raise your hands? Councillor Garcia, are you in agreement?
I'm on the phone. Does anybody hear me?
Yes. Are you in agreement with the minutes of the previous meeting?
Yes. Thank you.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Yes.
I can't use my hand function. I got it now. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. If you can lower your hands.
Sorry. Thank you.
Right. Agenda item 2 are apologies to receive apologies for absence from the meeting. Do we have any apologies?
There are no apologies for tonight's meeting, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 3 are declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest of A, non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Councillor Eccleston?
Yeah, R180936, Corston, Ward Councillor, and R201026, Thurleston, Ward Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Roodhouse?
R201026. The site includes a site for a fire station, and I'm a member of the Warwickshire Fire Authority.
Thank you. Councillor Gillius.
Yes, Chair, it's application R18/2076.
Thank you. Councillor Picker.
Application R20/0415, Ward Councillor.
Thank you, and that applies to me as well, who's ever recording this. Councillor Garcia, have you got any non-pecuniary interests? Nope, don't hear any. Okay, hands down. So B, pecuniary interest as defined by the Councillors' Code of Conduct for Councillors. And C, notice under Section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Okay. Right, we now move on to the applications for consideration. Before we begin this evening, those of you who are watching via the live stream may have picked up that we have been doing an awful lot with Rugby Borough Council on the litter problem that we face in the borough, and that there are going to be numerous strategies put in place to try and tackle the litter. As far as planning is concerned, I have had discussions with the planning officers, and I have asked in future that we have an informative on major applications where there is likely to be a litter problem, so that we can try to get the developers and the applicants to manage the litter on the particular application that concerns them. Before we begin, I'd also like to thank all those people who've taken the time to write in and to email with their concerns and their opinions on the various applications that we're going to be considering tonight. There's also, I understand, been an awful lot of opinions expressed on social media, and I would encourage people who are doing that to take advantage of the opportunity to actually register to speak at a planning committee meeting, and you will be able to do that by following the advice on the council's website. I'm going to ask Richard Holt and Sarah Chapman to speak now about how we handle our planning applications.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's correct. We encourage...
Unknown participant is now exiting.
We encourage all third parties to actually engage in the planning process. There is obviously a short period of time when the formal consultation period goes out on applications. However, if an application is going to a planning committee, then we obviously have the opportunity for people to register to speak. It is on a first come, first served basis, and people can register to speak at any time during the determination process of that application up until 12 noon on the Monday before the committee, which is obviously generally on a Wednesday evening. And that then would enable them to then deal with being able to talk at committee. It's managed by our Democratic Services team. And like I said, actively encourage the general public to get involved.
Thank you. Sarah, do you wish to add anything from a legal perspective on that one?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing further to add. It's worth highlighting that we do often get a number of representations on planning applications, particularly the major ones. So it's worth, if there's a planning application that a member of the public or a parish council, for example, is interested in monitoring the progress of the application, they're welcome to contact planning officers to ask for updates as appropriate. And the planning committee agenda is published every month, so it's worth checking that to see if there's any applications of interest on there that they may wish to register to speak with.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Right, we're now going to move on to the first application tonight, which is R18/0936, and this concerns land south of Coventry Road and Corston Lane, Coventry Road, Corston, Rugby, and Maxine Simmons is going to present. Over to you.
Good evening. Can I just confirm that you can see the screen?
I can, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I just need to go back to the beginning. Okay, this is an application for 210 units with access and all other matters, access proposed at this point and all other matters reserved. The proposal includes an area for a primary school. The red line shows the application boundary, but committee will note that the applicant owns a significant part of the area shown to the site in blue, which includes ancient woodland. The slide also shows an aerial view which confirms that trees are restricted to the periphery of the site. This slide shows views of the site from the northeast corner, views looking south and west, and a view towards Corston Spinney. Key boundary trees on the left have been incorporated into the design of the scheme, including the prominent oak tree on the eastern side of Corston Lane and a further prominent tree on Coventry Road. The top right picture shows where the pedestrian and cycle access will emerge on Coventry Road in the west, which will not affect trees. There will be some loss of trees, such as this lime tree in the bottom corner, but it will be demonstrated that this can be mitigated, and the tree officer raises no objections in relation to the scheme. This shows the parameter plan, which shows the relationship of the developable area in beige and the lilac area for the primary school in purple, and the remaining area of open space. This represents 40% of the application site. The developed areas are set away from Corston Spinney with a very large buffer incorporating the open space, which is in excess of national guidance and the emerging Southwest SBD. The development framework plan shows the uses in more detail, with pedestrian and cycle routes embedded within the development and showing tree line routes in addition. Street trees are also proposed in verges along the roads to improve air quality and wildlife refuges. A key aspect of this proposal is the effort that has been put in to mitigate the proposal in terms of landscape and biodiversity. Extensive new native tree and hedgerow planting is proposed within the public open space, thicket planting along the edges of Fox Covert, linking ecological corridors through the open space, buffering the woodland. A children's play area is to be incorporated close to the primary school with a play trail, timber play equipment and natural play features to connect children to the natural landscape. There will be some loss of trees due to the highway requirement of a roundabout, but these trees that are being lost will be replaced by large semi-mature trees in proximity to the roundabout as mitigation. A key drawing connected to this scheme is the landscape strategy plan, which incorporates the approach to landscaping and biodiversity in more detail. Reserved matters are required to conform with this plan as part of condition 5. This shows the enhancement of the open space in biodiversity terms with significant wildflower planting, new tree planting and replacement of lost trees and hedgerows. The preservation of the species-rich hedgerow along the western boundary of the site and replacement of the lost hedgerow from Corston Lane. One thing I need to clarify from the report is that the applicant has offered to transfer the woodland it controls in 2 phases. A first phase is to be transferred as part of the application to the council, and a second phase will be connected with development to the south of the woodland. Allowing the council to control and manage the woodland gives significant capacity to provide public access, play facilities and generally manage the woodland for the public good and improve tree health. Landscaping, trees and biodiversity are to be managed by conditions 9, 11 and 12. Access is sought at this stage, which incorporates highway requirements in the form of a 4-arm roundabout, serving not only this application, but the allocation as a whole. This ensures the network is not affected. The highway works have been safety audited and take into account the needs of all road users, including providing safer routes for pedestrians and cyclists from Lime Tree Village and other adjacent residential developments along Corston Lane. There is an additional access off Corston Lane for the school, with pedestrian and cycling facilities along the widened Corston Lane, with internal cycle and pedestrian links to both Corston Lane and Coventry Road, together with traffic calming at an existing pinch point. The principle of development is that the site falls within Southwest Rugby Sustainable Urban Extension, which under policy DS8 allocates 5,000 dwellings. Sustainable urban extensions are in themselves sustainable, so the site is in principle suitable for residential development. The site is subject to the revised draft West Rugby Master Plan supplementary planning document. It is not yet adopted, but has significant weight. The Southwest SPD allocates a framework Section 106 approach to equitably and proportionally apportion the cost of delivering strategic infrastructure required by the allocation between the different development parcels, including this site forming part of the allocation. Since the publication of the report, 3 further representations have been received in relation to the proposal, one of which oppose the destruction of the land, wildlife, services and road infrastructure. Another expresses concerns about parents parking on Corston Lane. The other questioned being able to approve this scheme as it's an EIA development in advance of the SPD, and wanting assurances about the protection of Corston Spinney and also endorsing comments of the Wildlife Trust. In response to these, the woodland and open space areas are not being destroyed but enhanced. Any lost trees and hedgerows are to be replaced. The purpose of the access along Corston Lane is specifically to prevent parking on Corston Lane by parents, and other conditions also require a travel plan for both the school and residential areas to encourage walking and cycling. Corston, Spinney and Fox Covert would actually be improved as a result of the phased transfer of the woodland to the council, who can then manage it properly, and open space areas will be enhanced by biodiversity features rather than simply being a field. On the question of being able to approve the application in advance of the SPD, it is the approved local plan that allocates the land, not the SPD. So key issues in relation to this proposal firstly relate to land use distribution. The proposed uses and their distribution within the site, the residential uses, open space and primary school, accord with the local plan and the emerging Southwest SPD. There are no fundamental conflicts with it at all. The main consideration is the arrangement of the residential and school to the north, with the open space located next to the ancient woodland. It is critical to maintain this relationship in the reserve matters to maximise the buffer to the woodland, and conditions reflect this. This proposal also has received support from Homes England, who are a key development partner for the Southwest. In terms of highways, Highways raised no objection to the proposal and confirmed that the impact on the proposed network is not significant. The highway works do require the loss of trees on Coventry Road and the low quality hedgerow along Corston Lane. This is unavoidable if we are going to develop this allocation, but the designs have been deliberately altered to preserve the hedgerow and prominent tree on the eastern side of Corston Lane, and the western hedgerow is to be re-provided within the site. This will be accompanied by extensive planting, including wildflower planting within the site and open space area. In terms of heritage and archaeology, the site is located near a listed building, but the detailed design and conditions can mitigate the less than substantial harm that results. There have been no objections from WCC Archaeology, so issues to do with this can be dealt with by conditions. There is no objection from the local lead flood authority. Again, these issues can be dealt with conditions, and other material impacts in relation to air quality, sustainable buildings, broadbands and fire and rescue can similarly be controlled by conditions. Another issue is, as 40% of the area is open space, keeping the area clear of litter will be an important aspect for maintaining the biodiversity of the site and managing amenity with regards to its public use. Whilst this is normally covered by environmental legislation, an additional informative is suggested connected to the LEMP as shown. In the planning balance, it is considered that there would be economic benefits during construction. It's estimated to be 300 jobs and 60 permanent jobs generated within the school. And the economic spend, once residents are in situ, having a positive impact on the local economy. It's estimated to be £4.4 million per annum on retail and leisure. There will be social benefits for new housing, including 63 affordable homes, a mix of house types and tenures contributing to the housing land supply. The development will provide 5 hectares of open space, including a substantial landscape and ecologically managed buffer to the woodland. These exceed national guidance and local plan policy, offering significant biodiversity and landscape benefits to the scheme. The proposed development includes the transfer of part of the woodland to the council in order to enhance its ecological value, deliver biodiversity net gains and provide a recreational resource for local residents. The proposal will also make fair and reasonable contributions towards strategic infrastructure in line with the framework section 106 master plan. It is not considered that there are significant issues against the proposal that cannot be mitigated through section 106 or conditions. In addition, the proposal does not significantly conflict with the emerging Southwest supplementary planning document, which has significant weight. And again, the section 106 elements can be undertaken in a manner which is consistent with the section 106 framework approach advocated in the emerging SPD. In conclusion, it is considered that the benefits to the proposal outweigh any harms, and approval, subject to conditions under section 106, is recommended.
Thank you very much, Maxine, for that. Very clear plans, very clear photographs, and the report outlines exactly what this development is about. An awful lot of work has gone into this particular application, and can I thank you and your fellow officers for all the work that's gone into it. I think our Head of Growth and Investment would like to come in at this point. Steph Gibray, are you there?
Thanks very much, Chair. Yes, just to add a couple of points, really. Maxine covered the detail extremely well. I just wanted to flag that there's been a lot of discussion about the timing of this application, but we are broadly comfortable with this coming forward at this time, as it complies with local plan policy, and we've discussed the weight attributed to the South West Rugby SPD. I just wanted to add that the developers have taken a very collaborative approach towards this proposal. They've taken part in a wider master planning process with the West Midlands Design Review Panel and Homes England to consider the wider Southwest allocation. And there's been some very positive feedback in relation to the scheme, again from the Midlands Design Panel and Homes England. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Right, so now we move into debate. And the first hand up is Councillor Cranham.
Thank you, Chair. I could easily get enthusiastic about this development. 210 houses, 63 which are affordable, a school, a superb environmental and biodiversity plan, and I've got no hesitation whatsoever of recommending approval.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cranham. Councillor Bucklin, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Just one observation. I noticed in condition 22, there is 1 to 10 of the points there, which is basically kind of days and hours of construction deliveries, noise mitigation, dust mitigation, and various other things in terms of the operation on the site. Now, I've had complaints from Coventry Road residents in recent years in terms of considerable amount of development has occurred around them, and they're kind of a little bit tired and weary of some of the kind of activities. So could you pay particular attention when you're agreeing the terms with the developers on those items 1 to 10 in terms of preserving the kind of the environment of the residents of Coventry Road? But on that, I'll give all due to the credit to the officer. It's a good condition as long as it's negotiated well, and also it's policed as well. So on that basis, I've got no hesitation but to kind of second for approval.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butlin. Councillor Roodhouse?
Thank you, and can I thank the officer for a detailed report. Just a couple of questions really to clarify some points in my own mind, even from reading the report and looking at the conditions. One is about the actual width in metres of the buffer now, of what will be negotiated, because I recognise this is reserved matters, which I don't always like, to be honest. So I'd like to, I know you're saying it's over the policies and things. The other bit which was been touched on is around the school, and I do share concerns around that, because even with school transport plans and everything in place, that still doesn't take, people don't take any notice of those generally. So there will have to be at some stage something. It could be an informative, possibly some further discussions how that will handle as the school comes on stream.
Thank you. The width of the buffer zone, we've got David Gower, I think, our arboriculturalist with us tonight. Would you like to handle that one, David?
Actually, Chair, through you, Chair, I might be able to offer something as well.
Okay.
The width in metres is between 30 metres as a minimum to over 100 metres, and condition 5 requires that the reserve matters has to be in accordance with the landscape strategy plan and the parameter plan. So that essentially fixes the width of the buffer in the reserve matters. I don't know whether David Gower wants to offer anything in addition as well.
Oh, thank you, Maxine. Yes, the buffer zone is, as you described, it is very wide, and it goes beyond government guidance, so it's more than acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Right, read the concerns with the school. Does one of our Warwickshire County Council officers wish to respond to that one?
Yes, if I could, Chair, it's Janet Neal. I think I might be able to help a little bit
Thank
with
you,
that
Janet.
one. When we get to the stage that we confirm where the school site's going to be, we've had informal conversations and we're pretty clear where that is going to be, but obviously it's a reserve matters issue. We will then work with the Safer Routes to School team to ensure that the safe access to and from the school and that people's concerns are addressed. Unfortunately, transport outside schools is always a concern. And, you know, when we've got developments coming forward like this one, we're in an ideal position to do what we can from the get-go, rather than having to try and retrofit things, which we have to do with a number of schools in the town. So we will put a requirement there on the developer that we have to work with the Safer Routes to Schools team as part of this moving forward. Thank you. Councillor Roodhouse, does that answer your two questions?
Sort of. I'll listen to the rest of the debate.
All right, thank you. Councillor Gillius, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Well, it's a question coupled with an observation, really, and that is regarding the tree planting. I'm all for tree planting, but I'm a little bit concerned when trees are planted far too close to a highway, because when they start off quite small and then they mature after a few years, you end up with vehicles rubbing against the boughs of the tree, and you can see evidence around the borough where people have run off the road and hit the tree. So I'd like to think there was a minimum distance away from the highway where the trees could be planted in safety, so they can grow without any danger to them or people in the future.
David Gower, I think this is one for you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a valid point, but in this day and age, it is possible to plant with the right species. For example, a tree of columniform, which grows upwards rather than outwards, to kind of mitigate the effects of highway traffic. It's just through careful species choice.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sanderson. You're muted, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Good to see that this one actually complies with the emerging SPD. That's a positive. I do share Councillor Roodhouse's concerns with regard to the school. I mean, it should be noted that in terms of air quality, some of our schools have the worst air quality around them, particularly primary schools. And when one takes into consideration that a child in a pushchair or going to nursery is at the same level of the exhaust of an SUV, that's quite a considerable matter to take into account. I mean, I'd like to see, for example, the county council coming forwards with encouragement towards walking buses. In terms of the further, there was some concerns expressed about neighbouring roads that could be used as rat runs to the school. And again, I'd like to see the county council come forward with some proposals on those, on how they stop those rat runs from occurring.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Janet, would you like to respond to the concern about the walking bus and schools, and perhaps one of our other Warwickshire County Council officers would address the air quality and the traffic, please?
Certainly, I'll give it a go anyway. Things like walking buses is obviously something that is up to individual schools, but we do have our road safety team who do go in and work with schools, and something that we are asking for from planning applications now, including this one, is a contribution based on each house, each dwelling contributing a certain amount of money to tackle road safety initiatives linked to the development. So we would see, in the same way as when we deliver new schools, we require road safety initiatives around the new school. The difficulty that we have is that although the schools will have priority areas, parental preference means that if there's a space at the school, people can travel to it. And that's where we do have difficulty, because obviously a school will want to fill places because they get their budget is based on the number of pupils they get. But we're very clear that we want to work with the developers on this one. We're also looking at the wider Southwest Rugby area and ensuring that there are safe walking and cycling routes to access all of the new schools that will be delivered on there.
Thank you. Does anybody else from Warwickshire County Council want to come in on this one?
I can, through you, Chair, if you don't mind. It's Joanne Archer.
Thank you, Joanne.
Just to say on the point about air quality and the rat running issue that Councillor Sanderson raised, as part of the Reserve Matters application, a lot of attention and time is spent on trying to get those residential access roads to a maximum of a 20 miles an hour speed. So rather than actually be a 20-mile-an-hour zone, the idea is that the actual alignment of those roads is such that traffic wouldn't travel at a greater speed than that. And that's a way to try and tackle the air quality, the general pollution effect. We try and do that by horizontal alignment changes rather than introducing vertical traffic calming features. So rather than traffic going slow over a speed hump and then speeding up again, if you've got a constant change of alignment as the vehicles have to negotiate bends, that is more effective at keeping the speeds down.
Thank you very much for that. Maxine, do you want to come in before I ask Councillor Eccleston to come in?
Yes, I just wanted to add that condition 35 relates to air quality, and one of the things that the development will have to do is to ensure that they have either ultra low emission boilers on all of the residential and the school, or a green equivalent such as ground or air source heat pumps. There is also, in relation to general amenity, two conditions, 32 and 33, relating to noise assessments, both for the residential and the school. And as we've said, conditions 29 and 30 also relate to travel plans for the school and for the residential areas.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Eccleston.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank Maxine as well for a very concise presentation. Well, I guess the inevitable is happening, and we're starting to see the bulk of the development now starting to come forward for Dunchurch Parish. I certainly welcome the virtual adoption, should we say, of the draft SPD. I'm encouraged by it, and it's removed a lot of the concerns I had. And I know it's addressed a lot of the concerns and issues raised on social media over the last few weeks and months. But I do believe, and I agree with Councillor Butlin, that it's imperative that the officers do ensure that the measures outlined in terms of the environment and biodiversity and ecology, etc., is strictly adhered to. And I hope that we as a council will ensure that those views are enforced. And the other one I have concern with, just touching on Councillor Sanderson's view there, is Corston Lane and the widening of Corston Lane. Corston Lane is already known as a rat run, as you mentioned. Widening it will make it faster. It's currently a 40-mile-an-hour area. Traffic travels an awful lot faster than that, and it's known as Wing Mirror Alley by the locals. So it would be nice to see some sort of traffic calming measures on the now wider Corston Lane. And I also note comments on the cycleways, and I welcome certainly future detail being given to this kind of joined up strategy on that subject to allow kind of the safe cycleways joining up recreational and residential commercial areas. So rather surprisingly, I support this for those reasons.
Okay, thank you. Maxine, is that your hand up again? Okay.
No, I just didn't take it down. Sorry.
Right. Well, I have to say it's an excellent report and presentation, and I'm satisfied that concerns that have been raised about transport, heritage, archaeology, biodiversity loss, flooding, air quality, they've all been addressed and have conditions and informatives. The affordable housing quota, it's good to see that that's been recognised and has been outlined. The economic benefits to the borough are quite significant. So we have had it proposed by Councillor Cranham, seconded by Councillor Butlin, that subject to the conditions and the additional informative regarding the litter within the landscape management, all those in favour, please raise your hands now. And we also need to take Councillor Garcia's vote, Veronica. She's managed to get her hand raised. Good. Right. How many?
That's unanimous, Chair.
That's unanimous, is it? Thank you very much, everybody. OK, you may lower your hands. OK, we move on to the next application, and the next application is R18-2076. It's Sherwood Farm, Rugby Road, Binley Woods, and Erica Buchanan to present. Over to you, Erica.
Thank you. Good evening, folks, councillors. See if we can get this loaded up.
That's fine. I can see the presentation.
Can you? Oh, good. Right. Sorry, so I haven't got it seen it on mine. Right. This application is for the demolition of the existing buildings, change of use, pasture land, domestic residential curtilage to serve Sherwood Farm, and erection of 80 dwellings with associated access, infrastructure works and public open space. This application was previously presented to committee last March, where members recommended approval subject to the section 106. This is the planning layout that has, just as a reminder of the proposal. So during the negotiations of the section 106, additional information has been submitted, resulting in the amendment in being proposed the amendments to conditions. Condition 9, this condition required an air quality report to be submitted. This report has now been submitted, and as a result, it is confirmed that the scheme is air quality neutral and complying with policy HS5. The proposed amended condition 9 should refer to tables 2 and 3 of the air quality SPD, and not table 1 as was in the as presented in the draft, the revised draft decision. It is therefore the recommendation is for the members to agree the amendments to condition 9. In terms of biodiversity, the heads of terms for the section 1 and 6 included a financial contribution for biodiversity enhancement. Initially, it showed a net loss in biodiversity. This has subsequently been amended and there is now a net gain of 10.6 habitat units, and therefore there is no longer a requirement for a financial contribution. Therefore, to ensure that the enhancements are delivered, it is proposed to include this in the proposed amendments to condition 15 set out in the draft decision. In addition to the above, since writing the report, further discussions have taken place with the applicant in relation to other conditions set out in the draft decision, and it is requested that members consider the following additional amendments. Condition 2, some house types have been omitted from the plan list and will need to be added. Condition 5 and 18, an AMS has been received and awaiting comments from consultees. And once the document is approved, the wording of these conditions will need to be updated to in accordance with the approved documents. Condition 14 and 25, these documents have also been submitted and are waiting for consultee comments. And again, once approved, these conditions would need to be updated to include in accordance with the approved documents. Condition 16 and 17 has been requested that it is amended to no above ground development in place of no development, and condition 16 to include lamp preferences as requested by the parish council. Condition 22 drawing reference needs to be amended to BWRR-PL 002 revision K. Therefore, the recommendation is that the members approve the amended wording to conditions 9 and 15 and delegate officers to update and amend conditions 2, 5, 14, 16, 17, 22 and 25.
Thank you very much, Erica. Not an easy one to go with all those conditions. Okay, over to committee members then. Opened up for debate. Councillor Cranham.
I think Councillor Picker was before me, Chair, but I'm quite happy to go first.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Councillor Picker, you're first, then Councillor Cranham.
Absolutely fine, although I did just notice Sarah had her hand up, so I don't know whether Sarah wants to come in prior to me speaking.
Okay, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to reiterate really for members' benefit that this is a kind of an update to conditions to deal with matters that have already been considered, and just to mainly administratively make sure they're in the right position so the conditions are correct and the obligations in Section 106 agreement are correct, rather than necessarily revisiting the principle of this development, if that just assists with focusing the discussions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Picker.
Thank you for that, Sarah, and thank you, Erica, for the presentation. I think that covers everything that we've already established, that this scheme is acceptable. It's already been granted consent. We seem to have a few minor revisions, but they all look perfectly satisfactory to me. So I am happy to move approval on this one.
Thank you very much, Councillor Picker. Councillor Cranham.
I'm happy to second it, Chair. We have been asked to approve some details. Let's get on with it.
Thank you. Councillor Gillies.
Yes, Chair. Yeah, I know the parish council had a few concerns and suggestions, and I'm just wondering whether the officer can tell me, because I've read through the conditions, whether or not all those concerns have been, adequately addressed, and that surrounds, the play equipment, the drainage and foul waters, and I know the street lighting issue has been addressed, and a situation around healthcare provision. Can you just sort of recap on that? Those things have been actually addressed and taken into account.
Okay, Erica, would you like to respond?
Yes, a lot of that is actually in the Section 106 that's being negotiated at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay. So Need to look at the section 106 on that one, Councillor Gillies. Okay, in that case, there are no more hands up, so it has been recommended for approval by Councillor Picker, seconded by Councillor Cranham. All those in favour, please show now.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Okay, hands down. Okay. Thank you, Erica. You can take your presentation down now. And we now move on to the third application, which is R19/1540. This is Rolls-Royce Anstey Aerodrome, Coomfields Road, Coomfields, Coventry. And our planning officers Nathan Loud and Chris Kingham are going to take us through the presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can see the presentation clearly.
No, I can't see anything. I've got a black.
Let's see if I can. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. So the application seeks outline planning permission for the redevelopment of the Rolls-Royce site in Anstey, with access via Anstey Business Park, which is immediately to the north of the application site. The proposal is up to 160,000 square metres of office, research and development and industrial floor space, 4,500 square metres of hotel floor space, 250 square metres of shops and food and drink floor space, of which no more than 20,000 square metres will be for office and light industrial floor space. This is an aerial of the application site. To the north you have Anstey Business Park, to the south you have Coombe Abbey Country Park, and to the west you have the edge of Coventry. This is another aerial. It's quite an old aerial, but it shows you some of the buildings which previously stood on the site when Rolls-Royce was in full operation. A lot of them obviously now have been demolished. It's outline planning permission, however, development parameter plans have been submitted. This shows zones for landscape and ecological areas, which are all in the light green. The dark blue are your development core areas, where buildings will be up to 18 metres in height. And then to the south, you have the more light blue areas, where the buildings will be a maximum height of 14 metres. The dark green area is the existing ancient woodland. The landscape parameter plan has also been submitted. This is the ancient woodland here, which is in the brown colour. Immediately below that, you have the landscape buffer and ecological zone. Along the edge, you have a strip which will be between 14 and 20 metres wide, and this will be a woodland landscape buffer zone, which will tie in to the existing consented landscape buffer zone, which you can see within this photo here, which has been implemented as part of the Megit development, which is situated here. 2 illustrative master plans have been submitted. The second one shows a much larger building within the centre of the site. The first option obviously shows 2 smaller units. The second option also shows in this area here the retention of the engine testing site, which currently exists on the application site at present. With regards to the principle of development, the site is located within the green belt and is therefore an appropriate development within it. It also harm the openness of the green belt. The proposal will also result in limited and moderate harm to 2 of the 5 purposes of including land within the green belt. This harm carries substantial weight, and the application should not be approved except in very special circumstances. With regards to the principle of development, policy ED1 designates this site as an existing strategically significant employment site, and therefore its redevelopment for employment use is considered acceptable. The intensification of development on the site will help meet the needs for employment land within the borough. With regards to the principle of the hotel and the retail use, policy ED1 seeks to protect employment land, and such uses for hotel and retail is not permitted by this policy. However, it's considered acceptable when you consider the wider scheme, as it only represents a 3% of the total floor space proposed, and it will result in an increase rather than loss of employment floor space. With regards to sequential tests, policy TC2 seeks to locate such uses first and foremost within the town centre. Outside of the town centre, sequential tests are required where it's considered to be proportionate and appropriate. They're not considered, a sequential test is not required for the retail use, given its size and its intended purpose. The sequential tests, which were submitted for the hotel, looked at 3 centres within Coventry, but these were not considered suitable or available sites. The hotel will meet the needs for the employment development at the application site, but also at Anstey Business Park. Turning to economic growth, the proposal will result in substantial investment in the borough and the wider region. It brings the former industrial area back into active use. It will create new direct and indirect jobs, up to 5,000 workers. It will capitalise and build on the success of Anstey Business Park, and it supports construction jobs and businesses. With regards to the landscape and visual impact, as the proposal is outlined, the specific details of the development are unknown. However, as mentioned previously, development and landscape parameter plans have been submitted. These show maximum building heights of 18 metres and 14 metres to the south, together, as mentioned previously, with your 14 to 20 metre wide landscape buffer area and your ecological mitigation zone. Looking at the impact, it is recognised that the proposal will have a greater impact than previously. It will result in a high magnitude of visual and landscape change. However, this impact will diminish in time as the landscaping and planting becomes established, as you can see from these series of pictures here, with the bottom one showing how the proposed landscaping will screen development over time. I'll now hand over to Chris, who will probably hopefully run through the rest of the slide.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nathan. So I just want to talk to you about a couple of key technical issues, the first of which is traffic flows and highway safety. In that respect, it's important to note that when Rolls-Royce were operating at the site, they only had access onto Coomfields Road via 2 existing access points. One of those is now being closed as a result of the Megit development, and one remains in situ. The proposed Megit development, when implemented, led to the creation of a new spine road through this application site. That spine road provides access from this Rolls-Royce development area into Anstey Business Park, which in turn allows access directly onto the strategic road network in the area. It also has a secondary access onto Coomfields Road. So just so you can see how that works in practice, if you can see my cursor here, this shows the spine road that's been built as part of the Megit development, and that goes through the site and ties into the existing highway through Anstey Business Park. So this is the primary route just to the west that goes on to places like the M6 and M69 and A46. But there's also this secondary access point onto Coomfields Road here. So the proposed development would seek to utilise that new spine road, and it would also seek to create a new secondary access point onto Coomfields Road in this location here. So for context, this is the Megit building that has recently been constructed, and it's basically located just to the southern end of the application site. The drawing here shows a close-up view. So the road would go in between 2 attenuation ponds, and it would be signalised to allow controlled access into and out of the site. So the proposal would also lead to obviously traffic impacts on the wider road network. In that respect, the proposal seeks to provide mitigation at the M6 Junction 2 roundabout. That would involve some signalisation works and changes to line markings in that location. They are also proposing through a freight management plan to set up a transport steering group to look at measures to mitigate the impact of HGV movements to and from the site. And one critical aspect of that will be ensuring that there is no HGV access onto the Coomfield Road entrances. In addition to this, they're looking at providing bus services to the site, and each occupier would have a travel plan setting out how it would encourage employees to access the development by sustainable transport instead of private cars. The transport assessment that has been submitted identifies that there would be some moderate levels of additional queuing onto the opposing A4600 approach, but this is not all attributed to the proposed development and has other causes as well from additional works going on in the surrounding area. Critically, it has identified that there would be no severe impacts resulting from the proposed development on junctions and roads in and around this location. And of particular note is that it would lead to a reduction in traffic routing via local routes. So that's going out onto Coomfields Road and routing through places like Anstey Village. So when you compare it to when Rolls-Royce were operating at the site and only able to access on Coomfields Road, it meant basically all cars going to and from the development would have to route through places like Anstey Village just to access the site. Well, that would no longer take place because there would be a direct access onto the strategic road network. In terms of heritage, the site would be visible from the northern edge of Coombe Country Park, and that's a Grade 2-star registered park. So this has led to Historic England raising some concern about that, particularly in terms of the scale of the buildings and lighting. Now, the scale of the buildings would be hidden largely by the buffer zone over time when it establishes. So that's the 14 to 20 metre wide buffer zone that Nathan mentioned earlier. And you can see here, this is the view from the northern edge of Coombe Country Park. So you can see here, this is how it looks at the moment. And then at year 0, so just when there's basically just whippets of planting put in, this is a view of the development. And then at year 15, the landscape would establish. And you can see there, that really does screen the impact of buildings on that southern boundary of the application site. So in time, we're satisfied that the harm would be lessened. In terms of lighting, we proposed a condition on the agenda which would deal with that, and it requires a sensitive lighting design, so you can control things like the angle of the lighting, the intensity of brightness, and basically each planning application, each reserved matters application that comes in would have to submit a lighting assessment specifically for their development, setting out how they would minimise that impact on the surrounding landscape, and particularly to that Coomfields Country Park. Overall, it's considered that there would be, as a result, less than substantial harm to heritage assets arising from this development. There's a range of other matters that are considered in the report that you have. It's considered that the proposal would give rise to no detrimental impact to these issues, subject to mitigation that's secured by a condition. Turning to the planning balance, it's obviously important to note that the proposal would result in harm to the Greenbelt, and it should therefore not be approved except in very special circumstances. It's also noteworthy that there would be less than substantial harm to heritage assets as a result of the development, and that should therefore be weighed against the public benefits of the development. In that respect, we've gone through the economic benefits earlier, and they should be given very substantial weight in favour of the development. The proposal would also lead to social benefits, which should carry very substantial weight in favour. And in regard to the environmental impacts, we've looked at the potential adverse impacts of that, and we are satisfied that they could be mitigated subject to the conditions that are outlined on the agenda. Overall, we therefore consider that there are very special circumstances which exist to justify development in this greenbelt location. There are also public benefits which outweigh the less than substantial harm to heritage assets. The proposal overall complies with the development plan and is considered to be sustainable development. The recommendation is therefore approval as set out on the agenda, and we also have a couple of minor amendments to the wordings of condition 8 and 10 as set out on the screen. It's the crossed out and red text that we're seeking to change, and also the addition of informative 20, which is the informative about litter that the chair raised earlier on today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nathan and Chris. Again, an awful lot of work has gone into this application, so thank you very much for all your work that you've done, and very clear. I just wonder whether, as we've got the county transport with us, they wish to say anything further on the transport situation and the roads and highways situation, bearing in mind that the local residents have always had concerns about the traffic in this area. So have we got anybody from county who wishes to speak?
Councillor Lawrence, yes, I can take some of those points.
Thank you, Joanne.
That's all right. The points that Nathan and Chris made about the Spine Road providing a more direct and appropriate route through to the north to the M6 are absolutely correct, and that's the way the modelling shows it. There should be a benefit to the local network, and in fact one that improves it over the previous Rolls-Royce scenario when they were using it full amount of traffic that they generated. The only other thing I would point out is that the section 278 approvals that will be needed for the traffic signal junction onto Coombsfield Road will be something that design services would follow through with, and it will require a TRO probably to reduce the speed limit. The layout, I think, that was shown on the slide assumes that a 40-mile-an-hour TRO can be processed. If it can't, then there might have to be a slightly different layout shown that shows a separately signalled ghost right turn lane from the signals.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, I've got quite a few hands in the air. So Councillor Sanderson, you're first this time. Need to unmute.
I know.
Practice makes perfect.
Question to Chris Kingham. Chris, how wide is the buffer zone of tree planting going to be for the trees to be planted looking out onto Coombe Fields, and what's the mix going to be?
Okay, Chris, would you like to respond?
Yeah, do you mean the edge of Coombe Country Park?
That's right, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Not the road, the park itself.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Chris and possibly David might want to speak on this one.
Yeah, so it's this slide that you see here. So this is the southern edge of the site, and it's basically 20 metres in this location here. It's 14 metres up on this part of the western boundary, and then it's 20 metres minimum along this bit of the buffer here and going around that perimeter. So these are your views looking from the park around the bottom of the slide here, looking up. So basically, when you're looking north from the edge of the park, it's a 20-metre buffer you would be looking at.
Yeah, trees are trees are very useful.
Mix, didn't you?
Yeah, trees are very useful for reducing light, sound, and visual impact. What's the mix going to be?
So let David Gower answer that one then.
Okay.
David?
You still with us?
Hiya, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I haven't got the plans on me, but from memory, I think it was a good native mix, and I think we specifically asked for more kind of native conifers, for example, Scots pine. So you've got you've got all year round kind of screening as well from the evergreen side of things.
Yeah, that's very helpful, Chair.
Okay,
Thanks for that, David.
Councillor Picker.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Nathan and Chris for the detailed presentation. This is always going to be one of those challenging ones because, of course, we are considering development in the green belt, and we should always seek to resist that where, unless there are very, very special circumstances. And it's probably worth remembering that this is the Rolls-Royce site. It has a great heritage here in Rugby going back as far as earlier than World War II, I believe, and has seen an awful lot of technological development and innovation. So I think looking at the heritage from that perspective, I think there is a very strong case that this does meet that threshold. So then you want to look at how can we mitigate against the potential harm. And to my mind, the conditions, I think it's conditions 12 through 15, do also meet that threshold. And I was very pleased to hear the responses to Councillor Sanderson's question. So I think although we should be very wary of approving development in the green belt, I think this particular application does meet that threshold. And so I will move approval.
Thank you very much, Councillor Picker. Yes, and I tend to agree with you that traditionally we do not approve of development in the green belt. On this application, though, it is not an awful large amount of the green belt that's going to be impacted. Councillor Cranham.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm not the council's longest serving councillor, but I think I'm certainly the oldest. And I, of course, old enough to have worked in big factories employing thousands of men. There wasn't a tree on the site. Thankfully, we've come a long way since they approved them sorts of things. And this is well provided with green space and mitigation factors, and I'm going to second approval.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cranham. Councillor Gillies.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yes, we always find that whenever we talk about Anstey Business Park, it always seems to come under the umbrella of being in Coventry. But we've got to shout from the rooftops that all this is in Rugby. And so when anybody gets the opportunity to speak about it, let's just keep, flying the flag for Rugby. But, my interest is purely with people, jobs for people and the impact of development on people. Now, the officer went through the highway issues, but he failed to mention a key route on the new road on the second access onto Coomfield Road. He didn't mention Peter Hall Lane and Smeaton Lane. And anybody that lives in that area and, like me, has stood on that Smeaton Lane and Peter Hall Lane at key times will realise that a small country lane turns from a little sleepy lane to almost motorway movements of traffic. Now, I didn't hear anything about mitigation measures to stop that or limit it at least. So can we have some feedback from the officer and feedback from the highways officers to tell me what they're going to do in order that people that live along those lanes get a peaceful life?
Thank you, Councillor. So it's Smeaton Lane and what was the other one? You mentioned two.
Peter Hall Lane and Smeaton Lane.
Peter Hall Lane.
And
Okay,
they lead straight through to Stretton-under-Foss and through my ward villages.
Right. Who'd like to go first on this one? County or borough officers?
I can quickly chip in. So historically, when the Rolls-Royce site was in full operation, there was only one access, which always was taken from the Coomfield Road. So what we're saying is that the proposal will result in a betterment to what historically used to be there when Rolls-Royce was operating, because what you have now is the central spine road which connects to Anstey Business Park. So the majority of traffic going to and from the proposed development will be entering and exiting via the Anstey Business Park and onto the wider network, obviously avoiding the surrounding kind of more low-key roads such as Peter Hall Road and Quinfield Road as well, and Smeaton Lane.
Okay. Does anybody else want to come in and answer Councillor Gillies's question?
Joanne Archer from Privacy.
Thank you, Joanne.
I've just literally opened up the response that I sent through on the application, and there was modelling carried out using the Paramix model, and that showed that all those local roads were not adversely affected, which means that whilst we won't be able to control traffic and it will go the way it needs to go, we're hopeful that it should actually all come in through the strategic road network, mainly from the A4600 and the M6 through the Central Boulevard and down the spine roads within the site, because the modelling shows that that's the way the traffic would want to route.
Okay, thank you for that.
Chairman, could I come back on?
Gillies, yes, please.
Because I'm not talking about modelling. I'm talking about reality, how it is now. You know, and I'm sure that the councillors on this committee will support me in the fact that we want some sort of mitigation measures to reduce the amount of traffic flowing down those two lanes. It isn't rocket science. It's something that can be done with conditions, but we've got to do it because, you know, like Dave Cranham, I've been around a few years, and when Rolls-Royce was in full swing, people didn't go there by car. They were coached in from two coach operators that were based in Pailton, Clark's coaches and Lewis's coaches, who took 4 or 5 buses every day to and from. So there were very few cars at that point. So I'm looking at this from evidence that I've gathered and information that I'm giving you, not about modelling.
Okay. Can the officers advise us as to whether the conditions that we've got with the travel plans and all the other things that you've got on the highways, whether there will be sufficient measures? And we've also got informative too, haven't we?
Yes, Chair, I'll come in here. Yeah, basically, I appreciate the concerns that have been raised by Councillor Gillies there. We have to, though, look at the transport assessment that's been submitted and modelling as our base for evidence, and upon which we can legitimately request any kind of form of mitigation. And as Joe has just mentioned, the transport modelling that has been carried out shows that there is no severe and detrimental impact to those roads that have been mentioned. And that's not to say that there's not going to be no impact at all, but it's saying that it's not severe enough to warrant any form of mitigation. And what we have got, though, is the freight management plan, which specifically excludes HGVs from accessing out onto Coomfield Road and therefore being able to use those roads. So that's, I think, something that weighs significantly in favour of mitigation for the concerns that have been flagged there. And then we've also got the travel plans that will need to be submitted by occupiers. Now, I think it's possible that as part of that mitigation, that obviously employers can seek to do various strategies and measures to encourage employees to access via sustainable transport, and where they are accessing via private car, it can be made clear that the employees should be coming in via the strategic road network, as the modelling indicates. So I think there's scope there. I'd also add in that there's going to be a transport steering group that will be set up which will include Warwickshire County Council as highway authority as a member of that. So it allows them to look at if there are significant issues that start occurring in the local area, then that group can look at strategies and measures to try and reduce any harm and impact that's found to be occurring. So I think we have got a kind of comprehensive package of mitigation measures that will deal with some of these concerns.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think on the steering group then, I think it would be politic if you invited Councillor Gillies and also representatives from Coomfields Parish Council, who are the ones most affected, to be actually on that steering group. Right, moving on, Councillor Butlin.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's an unusual site in as much that it's an old industrial site. It happens to be in a green belt and right next to the kind of motorway network as well. So in effect, this is repurposing of old industrial site with modern buildings and improved landscaping, as well as a better access and protections to the environment as a result of doing that, because the old Rolls-Royce areas were basically something that kind of evolved over time without all the conditions that we have today. So I find when you consider what amount of business, jobs and everything else that it's kind of bring to the site, to the area, and the repurposing of an old industrial site that happens to be in a green belt, I think this is a good solution and a good application, and also it's got a good outcome for us economically and for the jobs in the area. And bearing in mind that we're very conscious of recovery kind of going over the next 2 years after the COVID crisis, I think it would be it'd be wrong to basically refuse this application, because I think this has got significant implications for us in jobs and the economy. So it's a nice double act from kind of Nathan and Chris, and I thank them for them, because I think they've covered just about everything, as well as the highways officers, in terms of creating a route out that people would want to use rather than kind of go through the back lanes. So on that basis, I've got no other price. I think it's almost a no-brainer in when you kind of what it's bringing to the region, and I'm kind of quite happy with all the work that's been done on this, and I'll have no problem with approving it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eccleston.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just in support of Tony Gillies, Councillor Gillies, I declare that my industry is highways, and just on reflection on the Paramix tool, I don't want to sound cynical, but basically you can make Paramix tell you whatever you want it to tell you. Adjusting this or adjusting that will give you the output that you want. So I share Tony's view that there's nothing like the experience of what motorists actually do in that area, and I would encourage further detail to be forthcoming on this, and I welcome your thoughts about having some kind of a transport committee. And I also agree with Councillor Butlin, it is a bit of a no-brainer, and I'm happy to second it.
Thank you. Councillor Garcia.
Hi, thank you. I as well think it's a great use of land, and shame it's in the green belt, but it is so much better and so much more updated. But again, I have real concerns about the lanes. I completely agree with Tony Gillies. And in fact, when Anstey Park was first sort of started, Anstey Village actually has really suffered from it and is being used as a rat run. And again, it's all very well saying that you've done your travel plans and everything else, but that doesn't really equate for human nature, does it? And I would like to see some things put down so that Anstey Village isn't used as a rat run continually. And the same really for the small lanes that really can't take the flow of traffic. There's continually accidents in Peterhall Lane, and that's without the increased traffic flow. So I think I've got real concerns about that, but I will be supporting the application.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. And I think that this idea of a steering group where we've got representatives involved on that can only help to get that those points across and mitigation in place. Councillor Srivastava.
Thank you, Chair. I think I fully agree with Councillor Tony Gillies' comments. I think we are talking about the people's concern. I think there are a lot of economic benefits. I can fully understand. I support the project. But one thing, officer talked about modeling. So was there any input from the public in the modeling?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure somebody will be able to respond.
I don't know whether Nick is still on the call or not. If not, I will do my best to field that question. The modelling is something that Warwickshire County Council develop and ensure that it reaches a good enough standard to reflect the local network. Then that piece of software is licensed to the developer for them to put in their development and their traffic flows. Then that's returned to Warwickshire to be reviewed and audited to make sure that it's still suitable for its use and to assess what the impacts of the developers' traffic forecasts are.
Thank you. Councillor Eccleston, you still have your hand up. Is that an old hand or a new point?
No, I was going to say thank you to Joanne there. Since the other guys have gone, I thought maybe I could throw you a bit of a line on Paramix, which is the model, and answer Councillor Srivastava's note as well. It's not done on public, Councillor. It's done on modelling, as I said, based on traffic flows, counts, turning movements, etc., etc. It can often be done with classification on vehicles, vehicle classifications, HGV cars, etc. So it's all done on volumes of traffic, predicted volumes of traffic, and they're all fed into the model, and the model gives you the output. So there's no local consultation with people, as you may have thought. No, that's not how it works.
All right, thank you. Okay. Hope that answers your question, Councillor.
My question is only this. Obviously, public is going to face all these issues. So there should be some kind of consideration for people's consultation and people's views, because they are going to face it day to day.
Well, I think you've heard that there's going to be a steering group, working party set up, and I've asked that we have representations from the local parish council and our local councillors on that steering group, so that they are consulted and their views are taken into account.
Thanks, thank you.
Councillor Gillies, your hand is up again, or an old hand?
No, it was up again, but I can't let this opportunity go by without mentioning something, a bit of an historical fact, because there may well be people, public, watching this that don't know anything about Anstey, because it obviously was an airfield at one point, and like a lot of airfields, they were converted into racetracks. Silverstone is the obvious choice. But at Anstey, we had often competing the 6 times world road racing champion, Jeff Duke. He used to lodge in a house close to Brinklow and competed on the circuit. And I was hoping that the developers, in their course of naming the roads, might actually name one of the roads after Jeff Duke.
All right, thank you. Well, hopefully somebody has taken note of that. Yes, I echo everything that's been said tonight, and I have to say that yes, I get very cross when I switch the news on and they insist on saying that it's Anstey Coventry. No, it's not. It's Anstey Rugby, and Coombe Abbey is Rugby in Rugby Borough as well. So let's shout about our lovely Coombe Abbey, and let's shout about our industrial heritage at Anstey. Right, moved for approval by Councillor Picker, seconded by Councillor Cranham. All those in favour, raise your hands now.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, you can take your hands down. Right, the next item that we have is R20/014. Now, when the report was published and I was going through the report with our planning officers, it became obvious that some of the consultation that should have happened hadn't been wide enough. And so because of that, I think we need wider consultation before committee can consider this application. So I'm going to move that we put this application back to the April committee meeting so that the extended consultation can take place. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor.
I will second that.
Right, all those in favour of putting this one back to the April meeting, will you please show?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that case, we will move on to the next application, which is R20/0422, and this is land south of the A5 Watling Street, adjacent to the M69 Junction 1, and Maxine Simmons is going to present.
Good evening again. This application is on Watling Street and is a part full, part outline application. The full application is for a petrol filling station and a drive-through restaurant and a new.
Can I just halt you, Maxine, because Councillor Mrs. Brown's got her hand in the air.
Okay.
Councillor Barbara Brown, have you got a problem?
Sorry. No, I haven't. I'm sorry. That was just fat fingers got in the way. I'm very sorry.
No, don't worry about it. These things happen. Sorry, Maxine, would you like to continue?
Sure. So the full application element is a petrol filling station and a drive-through restaurant and a new access off the A5. The outline element for the scheme is B1, B2, B8 units. This is a hybrid scheme, as I said, split between phase 1 and phase 2. It is also a split boundary application. The yellow boundary on the first picture indicates the area in between Rugby and Hinckley. The area in blue is mainly in Hinckley and consists of phase 1, although a lot of the buildings are also in Rugby, and the lilac area is entirely within Rugby, and that is known as phase 2. Here is an aerial photograph of the site. This area was used to build the surrounding motorway infrastructure and has become a local wildlife site over time. One key, very important point on this scheme is that there is a 2011 consented scheme. This could be implemented at any time, but the developers have sought to change the proposal to update it. It was subject to a call-in procedure and an inquiry at the time, and Warwickshire County Council gave evidence as part of the proposal due to the ecology value of the site. The right-hand side picture shows the proposed phase 1 and 2 layout, showing the different access point in relation to the scheme. The other thing I wanted to point out is the area to the north is a cluster of residential properties in close proximity to development. In the consented scheme, the access was off Wolvie Road, basically going around the back of these residential properties. The access is left alone in the proposed scheme, and access now comes directly off the A5. These are the detailed drawings for the phase 1 layout and the petrol filling station elevations. And this is the elevation for the drive-through restaurant. I put this slide up because showing the differences between the approved and the proposed schemes. The approved scheme is on a smaller area. So the proposed scheme is on 5.25 hectares, but you'll notice that the floor space is actually less in the approved scheme. There is some net gain in biodiversity with this scheme, especially on site. There are more jobs with the proposed scheme in comparison with the approved scheme. There were no sustainability standards in terms of the approved scheme. This proposal seeks to incorporate BREEAM very good standards, including photovoltaics on the business units, and increased sustainability measures. The B1, the B2 and B8 proportion goes up in the proposed scheme, and a roadside services facility is included, and the hotel and C1 and leisure uses are not in this scheme in comparison with the extant scheme. A key aspect of this proposal is the landscape strategy plan, which structures the development. Brackley, who are the applicants, have taken a wildlife-based approach to this site, and that's partially influenced the lower footprint in comparison with the consented scheme. They specifically sought pre-application advice from Warwickshire County Council Ecology before they went anywhere else, to ascertain how they could maintain the local wildlife status of the site and still develop it. The green roofs that you could see on the business units are going to be very specific to the ecology of this site. They're not just seed and mats, they are specifically include mixers that's replicated on site. It's considered that in comparison with the approved scheme, there are substantial ecological benefits from managing and improving the actual habitats, resulting in larger on-site net biodiversity gain compared with the consented scheme. Some areas of the site around the Sawbrook and along the periphery are no development zones incorporated and controlled by condition. There's a very strong commitment to a landscape and ecological management plan, which includes a 3-to-1 ratio of replanting trees that are lost with native trees in areas to benefit the local residents to the north of the site. As I said, they have a very strong commitment with BREEAM very good standards, and if you can see the larger unit, that is the location of where they're going to put their photovoltaics. Many of these type of features weren't included in the extant scheme, and ecology support this scheme in comparison with the extant scheme. So in terms of the principle of development, this has been established by the previous consent, which had higher floor space, fewer jobs, but included a hotel. The extant scheme was determined its appeal can be implemented immediately without the environmental and ecological benefits in the current proposal. As I said, this has 12% less floor space, but it is spread over a wider area. But the access is further away from residential, and green roofs and photovoltaics are incorporated. Now, in terms of key issues, whilst it's in a countryside location on a non-allocated employment site, remote from Rugby Town Centre, which are concerns for the proposal, the previous appeal also considered these issues, but consent was still granted. The stance on these issues is similar in the current proposal. Now, as I said, this is a local wildlife site, and grass snakes have been confirmed to live on the site. A great deal of effort has been undertaken to ensure the habitat is preserved and has connectivity with surrounding areas. As I said, some areas will remain untouched, which are mainly the boundaries and the Sawbrook. Although the proposal includes more employment, which does change transport patterns, there is overall no significant impact on the highway network to warrant refusal. There have been concerns from Warwickshire County Council in relation to developing this site in the manner proposed will prevent future bids and widening schemes that could come forward in the future. But at the present moment in time, there are no safeguarding proposals to block development, which is the normal way you deal with road widening. This scheme does involve the loss of 4 large trees due to the access coming off the A5. However, the mitigation package is on a 3-to-1 basis and focused around putting these near the residential areas. As I said, the green roofs, photovoltaics are incorporated into this scheme. And of the green infrastructure on site, 48% has to be this wildflower mix, which could be in the green roofs, in grass-created areas of parking areas, or in bespoke landscaping elements as well. There are, and again, this is to do with replicating the local wildlife site conditions as a specific requirement of ecology. This is considered better than the extant scheme. The current proposal creates 78 more jobs at a time of economic uncertainty. Access from the A5 reduces the impact on residents of Streatham Croft. The extant permission impacted them more directly. Right, I'm having, all right, okay, let me just, sorry, I just had a slight problem there. Other economic factors are Brackley are headquartered in Rugby and are associate of Stepnell Limited, who have done schemes like this before and have a good track record. They use a Rugby workforce, therefore there will be economic benefits accruing to the local economy from the construction alone. This is estimated to be 14.5 million. The gross value added from the development is estimated at 14.7 million, which is 3.4 million more than the consented scheme. The submitted economic impact report highlights that trade currently is being lost or leaked from Rugby into surrounding districts and boroughs, and therefore the proposal is thought to provide some clawback from some of this lost income. So whilst cross-boundary, the majority of the buildings and floor space are within Rugby Borough itself. And the operators for phase 1 are on board and very keen to start development within 6 months of obtaining planning permission, if that was forthcoming. Now, I do have some other information in relation to Burbage Parish Council, which are across the boundary, but they have an emerging neighbourhood plan, which is going to referendum on the 6th of May. They have a policy in their neighbourhood plan about business and retail, which I've included on the right-hand side. This is a material consideration. It does have limited weight because the plan is not approved at the moment, but it is fairly along the process, so it is a material consideration. However, the policy does not conflict with this proposal. Other issues, the phase 1, I want the condition to be worded in line with that noise information in comparison to the outline element. There are no other material impacts that would warrant refusal, and the various other matters can be resolved with conditions such as flood risk, air quality, sustainable buildings, broadband, fire and rescue, and the footprint. A section 106 is suggested to ensure that the green infrastructure of phase 2 is retained in that phase as reserved matters come forward. In relation to litter, we are suggesting, as there will be a landscape and ecological management plan, that we also suggest an informative to ensure that a litter picking regime is maintained as the site develops in future. In the planning balance, there are factors weighing against the proposal, such as the countryside location would not normally be appropriate for this type of development, but the extant scheme is a material consideration. Officers feel the hybrid scheme is much better than the extant permission, especially in relation to green infrastructure and photovoltaics. The increase in business floor space and conflict with employment policies weigh against the proposal. However, the extant permission has established that this principle is acceptable. So this is now about the detail. We think the details make this a better scheme. It is acknowledged, though, that the loss of trees along the A5 is a harm. Factors weighing in favour of the proposal is that there would be social benefits in the relocation of the access and the provision of 78 more jobs compared with the extant scheme. There would be economic benefits during construction and economic spend associated with uses on the site. The impact on biodiversity is definitely better than the previous approved scheme. The tree replacement is 3 to 1, and the 4 lost trees are being replaced by mature ones specifically. The environmental margins will incorporate a no-build zone, allowing connectivity for grass snakes near the Saw Brook. These factors weigh in favour of the proposal and overcome the policy harm, and as a result, subject to conditions and a Section 106, approval is recommended.
Thank you very much, Maxine. Very, very clear, and particularly clear on comparing the previous proposal, which could be built out, with this particular application, and stressing the differences between the two. Before we move into debate, I'm going to ask our Head of Planning and Enforcement, Richard Holt, to speak.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I remember that there was one point that I think we just wanted to stress, was that members may recall that probably 8 to 10 years ago there was the previous application, and that actually went to appeal, but then was actually called in by the Secretary of State at the time. So it's had that extra layer of scrutiny, and one of the big things that was debated was biodiversity offsetting, because it was the first site we had in the borough with it, and it was one of the first in the country, because Warwickshire County Council Ecology Department actually have been leading the way, or one of the authorities that have led the way with biodiversity offsetting. So it was really to stress that from an ecological point of view, it's had those extra layers of scrutiny looked at it, and obviously, as Maxine has outlined tonight, there is a significant benefit now with some of the ecological and landscape matters they're now putting forward in this current scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, so we'll move into debate. Councillor Sanderson, I'm not surprised that your hand is first in the air.
Oh, you know me so well.
Of course I do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a bit concerned about anything that encourages carbon-based fuels. But is there within the application the ability for the applicant to offer hydrogen and electric fuel recharging?
Okay.
Through you, Chair, there are condition 4 relates to EV charging within phase 1. And there is an equivalent condition. I am just looking up which condition this relates to. There is another condition in the outline, condition 37, that also relates to detailed charging in the reserved matters in the phase 2 scheme. There's also a specific cycle parking condition for both the outline in condition 3. And condition 36 also relates to cycle parking as well. And there is also air quality condition as well about on-site nitrogen dioxide emissions as well, just for the actual buildings themselves.
Right, so just to call it a petrol station is a bit of a misnomer then.
Well, it has to modernise in line with current environmental issues, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, Chair. This is quite a move away from the original application, the extant application. So that really is a step forward.
Yeah. Okay. And I hope you like the sedum roofs and all the rest of it, and the wildflower planting.
Wonderful.
Councillor Cranham.
Thank you, Chair. Well, whenever an application like this comes before me with a previously approved site, I ask myself one simple question: is the new one better than the old one? And clearly it is, particularly environmentally and economically. And I'm happy to recommend approval.
Thank you very much. Councillor Butlin.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. Has there been conversations had with Warwickshire County Council and the Highways England in terms of possible future ambitions towards widening this road? Because I'm more than aware at the moment, because of my work at the County Council, that the A5 is now becoming a significant transport corridor and economic development corridor. And I can understand why they want to put a petrol filling station is because there is more and more activity on that road. But are we kind of stopping any future kind of possibility of widening that road if it was needed for the future?
Thank you, Councillor Butlin. I don't know who's going to answer this one. Is it going to be you, Maxine, or have we still got Joanne or Nick with us?
I can start through you, Chair. The normal way that you would deal with road widening proposals is you would have in planning terms a safeguarded alignment, which will be a zone identified in the local plan to prevent development happening. Now, in this current proposal, you are quite right. There is a lot of concern about the A5. There is a specific group, strategic group, which comprises Warwickshire County Council and other partners to look at how to formulate proposals to road widen in the future. The difficulty at this point in time is, whilst we know that there are concerns, there's no specific proposals in relation to this section of the A5. There's no formal bids been submitted, no funding received. So the length of time hasn't been specified as to when we could have a definite proposal. So at the moment, there's nothing specific that we've got an implementable scheme for the road widening. That would have to take place as time goes along. But in planning terms, without a safeguarded alignment, we wouldn't be able to withhold permission.
Okay.
I don't know whether county colleagues wish to add anything to that.
Thank you. Yes, we are perfectly aware of the tension between the need to protect an alignment for safeguarding for future schemes. But as Maxine has just noted, it's the timing really which is the issue, and that there is no formal scheme layout at the moment which we can refer to in terms of a local plan policy to protect an area of land. So unfortunately, we don't really have power at the moment to be able to prevent development.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Councillor Butlin, do you want to come back on that one?
Well, I mean, it is where it is. I can see the reason why and I can see the economic benefit of doing it. And it's kind of quite a strategic site just nestled in there between the two main roads. It's just kind of future concerns, especially when I consider all the kind of like ambitions towards dualling between the M42 and the M49. So we are. It's not protected. They've got a right to kind of put an application in. We've got a right to determine it. So I've voiced my opinion, but I can't see as we've got a justifiable reason to refuse it, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you. Councillor Gillies.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I was on the site visit at that first application, and it is indeed just a barren piece of land. But yes, I'm pleased that the access is coming in where it is and not on what was the old Wolvie Road. But it is interesting to note that there is actually a filling station just across the other side of the road to that access, those that are familiar with the area. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, I can't remember the outcome, but I must have asked the question last time. We've got some high tension cables going straight across the middle of the site. I'm not quite sure whether that will restrict any development. But the key thing for me is that when we look very closely at the A5, and I'll probably raise this again in the next application we look at, is the fact that there are already a number of filling stations being approved and being built along that section of road. Now, on the section of road is what I refer to as the Golden Triangle, you know, from the M1 to the M69, which is a main thoroughfare and the ideal way to get HGVs around that Golden Triangle quickly and efficiently. So It is a difficult one, because I would like to think that the highways authorities would have a handle on improving the A5. I did join an A5 partnership meeting on behalf of the borough the beginning of this month, and I spoke to the representative from Highways England, who was oblivious to any need to do anything on the A5, as though you're just coming from another planet. But when we looked at, we had a Magna Park liaison meeting last night, and I managed to encourage 2 Highways England reps to come along and speak about what their intentions were along the A5. And unfortunately, neither of them were able to tell us, because they hadn't got an officer that had a strategy plan available. So it makes me wonder, what plans are being put forward for our future. It is, I just find it completely and utterly amazing. Have we got a strategy? What is it going to be? Have we got any plans for doing something about the A5 so that vehicles can move along there efficiently within our golden triangle? As I say, I've got no hesitation in seconding this proposal, but if it's gonna block, improvements, then we need to think.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gillies. Nicholas Dauncey, do you want to respond to that about plans and strategy for the A5 going forward?
Yes, please, Councillor. We work very closely with Midlands Connect, who are the national transport body, on the A5 partnership, which is a multi-authority group with elected members and officers from Leicestershire County Council and a number of other authorities.
We've lost your sound. Somebody's muted you. I don't know who. Or have you muted yourself, Nicholas?
The button, but I've tried to unmute myself. Thank you.
Right, I think we can hear.
Yes, there's of the A5. Thank you. Yes, we're trying to do further work on a strategy for future improvements on the A5 through the A5 partnership. So the whole route is being looked at a strategic level in terms of trying to identify options for future improvement.
Right, Councillor Gillies, I think that gave you your answer. Maxine has her hand up.
I'm ever so sorry, Chair. Sorry to come back on that, butting in there.
Go on.
But there is no strategy in place. There's no thoughts. There's no drawings. There is nothing in place, because the 2 meetings where Highways England had got the opportunity to say something, they couldn't say anything. They didn't know. And this is the snag. If we got something on the table to know what we're working towards, it would be really good.
Okay, can I ask that our Head of Growth and Investment takes that point up and investigates further and makes the point with the right authorities? Steph?
Yes, very happy to do that, Chair. We'll take that away as an action. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Maxine, do you want to come in before I ask Councillor Sanderson to speak?
Yes, I was just going to add, in terms of the overhead cables, Councillor is quite right that they would normally restrict development, but they've designed it so that they are over the car parking areas, so they're not quite as, they can accommodate that into the design. He's also quite right that there's a number of petrol filling stations in the area, but a key aspect of the planning process is not to interfere with competition. So I was just going to add that as well.
Thank you. Not a material consideration. Right. And the final word is going to go to you, Councillor Sanderson, before we move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the A5 corridor, presumably we can ask our officers to bring this forward from an officer point of view in the emerging Rugby local transport plan. it was seen to be the right place to raise that, as that's currently been consulted on and will be further consulted on. Now's the time to get these concerns raised about the A5 corridor.
Okay, and I think you've heard me say that I'm going to ask our head of growth and investment to take action on that one. Steph, would you like to respond?
Yes, please, Chair. Just to confirm, we did flag strategic highway issues as a part of our initial consultation response to the Warwickshire County Council local transport plan consultation that closed in March. We'll continue to make those representations in further consultation periods. And as mentioned earlier, I'm happy to have some offline discussions in relation to those points.
Okay, so I think, thank you. I think Councillor Gillies and Councillor Sanderson would want to be part of that. Maxine, is that an old hand, or have you got something else you wish to say before I move to the vote? Thank you. No, this has been proposed by Councillor Cranham, seconded by Councillor Gillies. All in favour of this application, please raise your hands.
That's 11-4, Chair.
11-4, okay. Sorry?
I saw 12, so that's unanimous.
12, it is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody, you may take your hands down. And we move on now to our last application in this section, which is R20/1026, Units 1 and 6, Tritech Cemetery Site, land north of Coventry Road, Thurleston, and Karen McCulloch is to present.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to confirm you can see the screen.
No, I can't.
Okay, let me stop it and start again. Hang on. Share screen. Any luck?
No. If you can't load it, perhaps Richard can load it, and
yeah, I'll just have one more go.
You can talk us through the slides then.
Still no?
No.
Okay, Richard, are you all right to share it, please? I'll stop sharing.
Yes, I'll see if I can.
Something was going wrong with mine on the last one because I couldn't see Maxine's slides.
Right, I've got it. Yes, got it on my screen now. Okay, Karen, you'll need to get Richard to move the slides on.
Okay, because I can't see what Richard's showing, but I'm sure we can sort it out. Okay, this application relates to land north of Coventry Road, Thurleston, where members will recall an outline application for warehouse development was granted last year. As you can see from the site plan, the application site boundary is very similar to the previous outline application which was approved. Can I have the next slide?
Okay, this shows us the scope of the application.
Okay, right, the application it's a full application, and as you can see on the plan, most of the built development is located in the south part of the site where 2 warehouse units are proposed. These will then also have ancillary office use, associated parking, servicing and ancillary buildings and structures. There will also be a temporary marketing building which will be just to the north of Northampton Lane, which is the pinch point in the middle of the application site. The proposals include the access, including works from the A45, M45 roundabout and Coventry Road. Unit 1 will be accessed from Coventry Road and Unit 2 from the access road. There will also be a temporary construction access from Coventry Road, and landscaping, earth mounds, which will be permanent and temporary. So at the top of the plan, you can see to the north of a haul road, you can see temporary mounds next to station farm cottages, and the big squares in the middle are the temporary soil mounds. There'll be the temporary haul road and a drainage basin to the other side of that. The next slide shows the application zoomed in so you can see the warehouse units in more detail. Going on to the next slide, the application has been submitted as a full application because it differs from the outline planning permission which was previously granted. So the key thing we need to consider today is how the proposals change from the existing planning permission. A key change is that the building heights will be increased to 18 metres and that the development will extend outside the developable areas which were previously approved. And the plan on the screen now shows the brown line, which was the previously approved developable areas. And you can see to the left of Unit 2 and the top right of Unit 1 and the other corner, where this proposal extends outside the previously approved developable areas. Additional changes include the addition of PV solar panels to the roofs, which will be a minimum of 25%, but permission is sought for up to 100% of the usable roof space for solar panels. The landscape bunds at the north, the temporary construction access, earth mounds and haul road are also new that weren't approved in the outline application. The first slide of site photos shows the site from, first of all, the southeastern corner, and the trees you can see sort of along the top of the slide are along Northampton Lane. And the bottom photograph there is from the northeastern corner of that bottom field, looking back towards the roundabout area, and you just see a lorry in the lay-by. The next site photos are looking towards Northampton Lane, and you can see the gap in the trees, which is where the access road is proposed. And the bottom photo is a view along Northampton Lane itself. And the next site photos are looking north from land near Thurleston, and you can see the lorry and the lampposts at the existing roundabout. Since the publication of the agenda, additional comments have been received. A letter of support has been received from Homes England, who comment that the application is broadly in line with the outline permission. They consider that the increased height is acceptable and any harm caused is outweighed by the economic benefits of the scheme and the sustainability measures. They comment that the Section 106 should ensure reasonable contributions towards infrastructure for the South West allocation as a whole. A letter of support has also been received from the Coventry and Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership, who comment that the development will bring forward a strategic employment site, leading to strong and positive benefits for the sub-regional and local economy. They have growing concern about the supply of employment sites within the region due to the fast take-up of sites, and consider that we need to replenish the stock of employment sites to meet market demand and maintain economic growth. And also an additional objection has been received from a local resident who's raising similar points to those on the agenda. The key issues to assess are the principle of the development, visual amenity and landscape, heritage assets, transport, highways and parking, the impact on neighbouring residents, trees and hedgerows, and protected species and biodiversity. And as I mentioned earlier, the key thing is the difference between this and what was previously approved. In terms of the principle, the site is within the area allocated for development by Local Plan Policy DS8. The principle of development for B8 uses was also granted by the outline permission, and the principle of the proposals is considered acceptable. The next slide shows you the elevations of the proposed warehouse buildings, which have a range of cladding colours, glazed elements, and they have barrel top roof forms, as you can see on that slide. In relation to the building heights, the condition attached to the outline permission restricted the heights in this part of the overall site to 130 metres above ordnance datum, which is the equivalent to 15-metre high buildings. The current proposal for 18-metre high buildings results in Unit 1 being 133.59 metres AOD and Unit 2 being 132.92 AOD. The applicants have advised that the increased height is required to allow the use of automated racking systems to increase efficiency and increase demand for online shopping. The proposed development will be visible from outside of the site and in the wider area, including residential properties, and these impacts will be increased due to the increased heights proposed. Photo montages have been proposed which show the comparison between the approved parameters plan and the proposed heights from the 3 highlighted locations to the south. So the first of those is looking from right of way to the south of the M45, looking towards the site. So on these slides, you could see there's a blue line and a green line in the frontage of the site, which shows the approved parameters by the outline application, and then the buildings show how they project above that approved height. The yellow and red parts at the back are showing the approved parameters height for the taller units further north within the outline site. The second one of those photographs, if you can change that, Richard, that shows the same, looking from the bridge leading north coming out of Thurlaston. So again, you can see how the buildings project above the blue and green lines. And the third of those is from Biggin Hall Lane to the south of the site, again with the blue and green lines and the buildings projecting above those. As these photos montages show, the warehouse buildings will be visible within the surrounding area, and the impact in the area is increased due to the increase in the proposed heights. It's considered that this will have an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding area, which is contrary to policy SDC1, and this carries weight against the proposals. The general building design is considered acceptable and is in accordance with the draft SPD requirements, and the impact of the ancillary buildings, drainage basin and earth mounds on visual amenity are considered acceptable. Going on to heritage assets, the Thurlaston Conservation Area is around 370 metres to the south of the site, and there are 7 Grade 2 listed buildings within 1 kilometre. No physical works are proposed to these heritage assets. However, the development could be visible from them, which results in impacts on their settings, and this impact will be increased due to the increased heights proposed. It's therefore considered that there will be less than substantial harm to designated heritage assets. However, given the distance between the site and the heritage assets and other intervening structures, the level of less than substantial harm is considered minor. This harm to the heritage assets must be given considerable importance and weight, and therefore weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. In terms of transport and highways, the proposals include alterations to the A45 and M45 roundabouts and the access road into the site from this, and the realignment of Coventry Road and connection to the access road, and those proposals reflect the works that were agreed at the outline stage. This application also includes the accesses into the proposed units and a temporary construction access from Coventry Road, which is shown on the bottom of these plans and will actually be in a position slightly to the east of the permanent access to Unit 1. Objections have been received from local residents groups and parish councils, which raise concerns about traffic impacts and highway safety. Based on the modelling that was submitted with the outline application, the County Highway Authority had advised that they were satisfied that up to 100,000 square metres of employment floor space could be occupied before further highway assessments had been carried out and, if necessary, additional mitigation secured. This was subject to measures to mitigate transport impacts such as a HGV routing strategy, improved bus services to the site and pedestrian cycle facilities. The current application proposes 30,435 square metres of floor space, so well within the 100,000. Conditions are proposed to secure the sustainable transport measures as on the outline application, and also to ensure that the current application floor space is accounted for when calculating occupation in relation to that outline condition which related to additional assessments. The proposed traffic generation is therefore considered acceptable. On the next slide, following the Highways initially objected to the proposal, and additional information was submitted as requested, which included vehicle tracking, visibility displays, vehicle movement information, bus stop details and road safety audits. Amended plans were also received which omitted the gatehouse originally proposed to Unit 1. On the basis of these, the Highway Authority raised no objections subject to conditions in a Section 106 agreement, and Highways England raised no objection to the proposal subject to conditions. As detailed in the agenda, the level of parking is considered acceptable given the sustainable transport measures, and the impact on highway safety is considered acceptable. In relation to neighbours, residential properties are located close to the application site as highlighted on the slide. It's considered that suitable separation can be achieved from existing properties. Although the outlook from these surrounding dwellings will be affected, this is not grounds to refuse the application. The proposals will include the retention of trees and hedgerows to the site boundaries where possible, although trees and hedgerows are affected by the proposed access from the roundabout and the access crossing Northampton Lane. In total, this application has 9 trees identified for removal, including 3 trees covered by a tree preservation order, as well as areas of hedgerow. However, these reflect the removals that were agreed at the outline application stage. No objection has been received from the Tree and Landscape Officer, and the impact on existing trees and hedgerows does, however, carry some weight against the proposals. In terms of protected species, the application included an updated species survey and desk study. Following comments from the county ecologist, amended plans were received, which included a wildlife tunnel under the main access road and amended lighting proposals to reduce the impact on bats. Revised comments from the county ecologist advised that the proposals will lead to a loss of 11.17 biodiversity units, and the county ecologist has requested conditions and a contribution towards biodiversity offsetting to address this loss. If a suitable scheme can be identified, any biodiversity offsetting contributions could be spent within the wider southwest allocation, for example at Corston Spinney. Subject to the conditions in the Section 106, the impact on protected species is considered acceptable. As detailed in the agenda, the development is considered acceptable in relation to archaeology, rights of way, air quality, noise and vibration, health impact screening, sustainable buildings, drainage, employment generation and agricultural land. A legal agreement would be required to secure contributions towards biodiversity offsetting, interim public transport facilities and travel plan monitoring, and the Section 106 will also safeguard the land to the south of Coventry Road for the provision of the fire station. These requirements comply with the relevant policies and national guidance. In terms of the planning balance, the proposal will secure the delivery of an allocated employment site, which will have a positive impact on the economy, including through new and relocated companies and other supporting businesses. It will provide around 500 new jobs, with 127 during construction and 392 during the operation phase. It will allow the provision of the first parts of the Spine Road network, which will lead to the eventual rerouting of traffic away from congested areas. It will provide walking and cycle links to the wider area and a bus service. And it will provide buildings to the BREEAM Very Good standard with PV solar panels to a minimum of 25% of the roof space and sustainable drainage methods. These factors carry weight in favour of the proposals, with the economic benefits having substantial weight. These are the public benefits which must be assessed in relation to the impact on heritage assets. However, other factors carry weight against the proposals, which is largely the impact on the character of the area and the wider landscape, the less than substantial harm to the settings of the designated heritage assets, the loss of the trees and hedgerows, including the 3 protected trees, and the loss of the best and most versatile agricultural land. It's therefore considered that the benefits of the proposals outweigh the factors against it. And although the proposals are contrary to policy SDC 1, this is outweighed by the other factors, and no material considerations have been identified to indicate that the development should not be approved. The recommendation is therefore approval subject to conditions in a Section 106. This is requested subject to minor changes to conditions relating to adding notwithstanding the details on the approved plans to condition 6, amending 24, 29 and 30 to include references to visibility displays and to require the temporary access to be removed before the occupation of Unit 1, and the omission of condition 38, which is a duplicate of condition 7. Additional informatives are also requested by the Highway Authority and referring to litter as with previous applications today. Discussions regarding conditions are also ongoing with some of the technical consultees, and delegated powers are requested to make any further amendments to conditions necessary if these occur before the completion of the Section 106 and the issuing of the decision. And on that basis, approval is recommended. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. And that is our fourth major application this evening. An awful lot of work has gone into that, but I think our Head of Growth and Investment would like to come in before I open it up for debate.
Thank you, Chair. Karen's covered my main point very comprehensively in her presentation. Principally, I just wanted to draw members' attention to obviously the economic contribution of the proposal to the borough's recovery, but also the letters of support that we've received from the Borough Council's Economic Development Team, Coventry and Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership and Homes England. Secondly, I felt it was important for members to note that the Economic Development Manager has submitted in his response an independent report from Avison Young, which demonstrates the economic case to raise the roof height, particularly in relation to changes in the logistics sector over the last 12 months. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I think Councillor Eccleston, was your hand first up, or was Councillor Butlin first up? They went up. Butlin, I think. They almost went up together. Councillor Butlin.
Actually, it was Councillor Eccleston. I saw his hand go up before mine.
Well, happy to go, Peter.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Peter, and thank you to the officer for a very succinct presentation there. This development's always been controversial, and for many good reasons, and it's had a lot of social media cover. You touched on that, Chair, earlier on in the whole of the Planning Committee. I'm rather surprised tonight that there have been no registered speakers on the subject, and especially since this was called in by one of our borough councillors as well, who also failed to register, but I guess you have to question the motivation behind that. However, as a borough councillor, I feel I must consider the strong views of my constituents on this matter. I believed, wrongly as it appears, that we resolved many of the issues back last year when the original planning application was approved. But again, we find ourselves tonight considering the height and the visual impact that these sheds have. So I asked myself the question, I asked the officers, so what has changed since we debated and voted on this last year? We're creating an impression to the public that developers can pressurise us as a planning committee and as Rugby Borough Council into reversing some of our recent decisions. And I appreciate that it's the right of the developer, certainly, to apply to modify these conditions. And we should be aware of the advice around responding to changes in the economic circumstances. But we shouldn't be held to ransom by developers on these points. And nor should we be tempted by claims from the developer that they have interested parties with their pens poised to sign leases and bring 400 jobs to the area. Those are going to happen with these buildings anyway, eventually. And this is just marketing hype on the part of the developer, I believe. Anyway, the decision was made on the height of these units and on the resultant visual impact. And I believe that we, as a committee, should uphold the decision taken last year. We don't want this site to look like a Ministry of Defence storage site. But I would leave officers and the developer with a thought. If developers need this 18 metres internal height, then why not consider meeting the local residents in some way and considering lowering the foundation of the buildings by 3 metres to preserve the visual impact as agreed last year? I know this will require additional consideration, the drainage, etc., but compromise on behalf of the community, I believe, is important. And I therefore move to reject this application and hope I have a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eccleston. Councillor Butlin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I won't be kind of seconding Councillor Eccleston, but there's two elements to this one. Is the visual impact. We kind of gave approval to this proposal on an outline planning application. Now we've got a full detailed planning application. So there's some aspects of this that we would have probably not had kind of view of on the other one anyway. But the main change is, one, a slight increase in the floor space from the original outline planning application, and also the 3 metre increase in the height of the building. And that is the most significant thing that we've got to consider today. In view of I've listened with care with what the officers have said, and also what the comments from Highways England, Homes England have said in terms of this application. And also I read with interest that autonomy that's going into the logistics industry is requiring 18 metres, and you'll find that 18-metre buildings are becoming the norm elsewhere. So it would far be from me to basically kind of build a building that will not meet the modern standards. I think on balance, the impact of an extra 3 metres to what was already approved is relatively insignificant compared with the benefits of the employment and future jobs that could be created on the site. And don't forget, this site was allocated. It's an allocated site for this purpose. So it's not outside our local plan proposals. So it's just a matter of those 3 metre extra on the height. And on balance, I think the officers have got it right, as does the comments from Homes England. So on that basis, I'd like for a move for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Butlin. Karen, your hand is up. Would you like to respond at this point?
Through you, Chair, I was going to address a couple of the questions raised by Councillor Eccleston, if that's okay.
That's fine.
The first one is what has changed since the previous application was submitted. I mean, the key things that have changed, one which nobody could predict was COVID, and the other one is Brexit. And the applicants have advised that there's been a significant increase in online shopping, which has led to increased demand for warehouse spaces, and they need to increase their automation to increase their efficiency. And also they need to relocate logistics space from outside of the UK. Those are the points that were raised by the applicants, but they were also supported by the council's economic development officer. In terms of lowering the buildings themselves, the previous condition did have, rather than being simply a building height limit, it did restrict the height above ordnance datum. So there was the option to dig down if you needed higher buildings. I think the difficulties in terms of engineering a 3 metre reduction in the site levels. There is a water main which runs across the site, and then also if you lower the ground to then drain the site into the existing drainage, which would be at a higher level, you'll need to look at pumping and increase sort of complexities in providing drainage solutions. Because they're warehouse units, the service yards would also need to be dug down to the same height as the buildings, which would then mean you'd have very steep slopes down from the surrounding roads, which may need larger service yards in order to get that to work properly. And they would also have the issue of what do you do with that amount of material in terms of taking it off site and dealing with that in terms of disposal or moving it to another site and so on. So I think those are the reasons why they've come in with this proposal.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Sanderson, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. This application depresses me a bit. It's not just the ridge height, it's its proposed use for the logistics industry. I didn't have a problem when we were talking about possibly a new manufacturing base for a local company. But for logistics, you're talking Amazon, eBay, DPD, large amounts of traffic movements, large amounts of emissions from those traffic movements. I'm not satisfied that it meets the requirements of the emerging SPD, which we've been advised is a material matter in this application. And I mean, I would be a lot happier if the office would withdraw this and go back to them and talk about a different type of planting scheme in line with the independent report I understand was circulated in terms of more structural planting around the site, which would deal with light fuel or other emissions. Because if it is going to be a logistics site and it is going to be allowing a lot of traffic movements and very long hours of working, it will have a very material impact on the local community. Also, as it would light and noise emissions. So I'm very unhappy with this. I will second Peter Ecclestone's call for refusal, not because I don't want to see the employment site here there, but I want to see it to be done to the standard as other applications we've had tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cranham.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm entirely in agreement with Councillor Butlin. This is a relatively minor change to the height of the buildings and a little bit of alteration to the access. It's a great employment site. We need that employment, and I am going to second approval.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gillius.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for that. I do get very much involved with the developments going on at Magna Park. As we know that for about 10 years now, that's been the biggest warehousing system in Europe. It is now just had an approval on a new warehouse, which is going to be situated on Magna Park North. And what they did, they put in another application, well, a revised application, because they wanted to make this particular unit quite a bit taller. So what they agreed to do was dig out the ground a little bit deeper. And that way the finished height was exactly the same as the previous building. But those of you who have driven along the A5 along St Magna Park South, another way is to try and do this diminishing shading of the steel cladding that goes up on the outside. So you get a very much lighter shade as you get near the top of the building. And on certain days, those buildings actually disappear from the skyline. I know over there they've mitigated all this sort of building by planting literally hundreds of thousands of trees. So that's one way of doing it. Well, two ways: digging the ground a little bit lower and the cladding on the side of the building. But my primary thoughts are the fact that in Rugby, we've been the fastest growing town in the West Midlands for, well, more than a decade now. We've got a number of high profile hubs, distribution hubs in the town, close to the M6. We've got Hermes, which actually they've only been there just over 12 months and they've actually outgrown the place. They're looking for somewhere else now. Then we got Amazon, and then we got Gap and H&M, DHL. They're all taking traffic south, north, all over. And now what we've got is we've got the proposal for this one down in the southwest Rugby. I haven't got a problem when the vehicles are going south along the M45, down south M1, but it's when they want to go north is when we get the problem, because they have to go along our Western Relief Road, and that is a significant bottleneck. All business, efficient business, are based upon getting from A to B, getting their products in and out quickly. And the bottleneck is from the Avon Mill all the way up through, past the M6 and right the way up to the A5. And I did say I was going to mention this again. The A5, and the real bottleneck is the Gibbet Hill roundabout. Now, I've just got to give a little bit of background to this because I've not had one day off from the original lockdown. And literally over a period of 12 months, I've done thousands of miles just within the borough of Rugby. And I see all these things from day to day. So it's not something I'm picking out of the air. It's what I witness on a daily basis. And we've really got to get our heads together on getting that A46 upgraded, or we get a different way of getting traffic along the motorway network, the M45 or A45, and a new link onto the M1 north, because we've got to do that. We've just got to do something. Otherwise, business will stop and we end up with a situation which I have to deal with on a daily basis. HGVs and workers rat running through the smaller villages. They turn left at Avon Valley School and they go through all the Foss villages. In the middle of the night they go through, and I've had people that have been woken up 5 or 6 times at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning with HGV rumbling through one after the other on roads which are not designed to carry these loads. So we've got to have some thinking on the infrastructure.
Right, okay, thank you, Councillor Gillies. I think you've made your point. Steph, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering whether it's worth our colleagues from Warwickshire County Council coming in on the highways points.
Well, can I ask Councillor Roodhouse and Councillor Garcia to speak, because they've had their hands up for some time, and then I'll go to our county colleagues on transport and highways. So, Councillor Roodhouse, you're next.
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't wander into Warwickshire County Council highways and ceramics modelling and the rest of it. Otherwise, I think we could be here all night.
Could be a bit of a bottleneck.
Yeah, I do have great concern, though, about the eastern boundary and the structural planting. I understand the point that the developers wanted to raise the roof for machinery and everything else going forward, but I do think that actually they could have sort of brokered it as well. We perhaps, I think, as a planning authority, could have pushed a lot harder for structural planting for the area, because it is quite a sensitive area around there. And therefore I still have great concerns around the planting of that. And, you know, it would be nice if the developers would have come forward with extra, because it just seems to me they're getting away with quite a lot here.
Okay, right. Councillor Garcia, and then I'll go to our county experts.
Right. I'm on it. Yeah, sorry about that. Something definitely wrong with me tonight. I was just going to say that actually, you know, you have to agree on all sides, don't you, really? I think that they could have maybe put the dug the ground out a little bit, but again, it's an important site, isn't it? And we have already passed the permission once, and it is quite a small amount that they're asking for. So I think that I should be in favour of this tonight. But equally, I do have to agree again with Councillor Gillies that I honestly, seriously do think that there's something wrong with the road modelling in this town. Every which way you go, we are jammed up. And it's the same actually with housing estates. They are now looking like NCP car parks. There is no space. And I think we have got to seriously have a look at what's happening with the roads, the parking and everything that goes with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. So have we got Nicholas Dauncey or Joanne going to come back on this highways issues?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, in response to the points, I think the points that Councillor Gillies made are absolutely correct. And we, for a long time, have been engaged with Highways England to try and push for improvements along the A5 and the strategic points on the network in order to get this strategic network operating as it needs to. We're completely on board and understand the points he's actually made about traffic rat running through on the B road and the villages. We've got various things in place, and at every opportunity we try and get provision made within Section 106 agreements or within conditions to try and make sure that we get HGV routing plans, that we're trying to get improvements where we can. We're currently in talks with Highways England over an improvement up at Gibbet Hill. It just takes an awful long time for any of us to deliver a lot of infrastructure, but particularly for Highways England. So we are, I mean, as Councillor Gillies hopefully is aware, Adrian and Nick do an awful lot on the A5 partnership, and they're talking to colleagues at the Combined Authority, West Midlands Connect, to try and get things up the agenda. But it's just a slow process.
Thank you. Councillor Eccleston, you have your hand up.
I certainly do, Chair. Thank you very much. Just to respond to one of Karen's points that she raised about getting rid of the spoil from the site if they do decide to dig the foundations down by an extra 3 metres. Well, there is a mineral plan, and there's going to be some very big holes all along the straight mile, which would be an ideal place to deposit spoil, I would suggest. And not wishing to bore Councillor Roodhouse with panoramics, but I share Councillor Gillies and Councillor Garcia's views on traffic and the increase in traffic, and the old chestnut of the Dunchurch crossroads comes up again, and the modelling of, they use something called Linsig and panoramics at that crossroads, and quite frankly I don't think it's at all realistic. I've had a colleague in highways describe panoramics as Linsig on speed. As I said, whatever you put in, you can get out. If you don't get the right answer out, you just change what you put in. As a practical demonstration, you stick a car in the box junction at Dunchurch and holding up the traffic, you can get 30 odd cars, which is 130 metres of traffic jam in relatively no time at all. And I think, going back to Tony's view, I think we need to do a lot more on traffic. And my final point is, interestingly enough, it was raised by Councillor Sanderson, and it is the use of these buildings as potentially as warehouses for online shopping. That does mean that they're going to be used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That was never mentioned when we considered this application back last year. And I know one of my constituents has asked that question, and now we seem to know the answer to that. It will be a 24-hour operation. So significant traffic at all hours of the day and night.
Thank you. Karen and then Steph.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on a couple of points that have been raised. Firstly, about the use of the site. The site is allocated as a B8 warehouse site in policy DS8. So it has been expected all along to be for logistics use. The outline permission also approves logistics use, so there would be nothing to stop, for example, Amazon submitting an approval of reserve matters application. The only reasons that we're here are because of the changes from the full application that I detailed earlier. In terms of the planting, the tree officer initially commented on the application and requested additional planting to the site boundaries. That was provided to both the eastern and southern boundary with additional trees going in there, and he's raised no objection to those amended plans.
Thank you. Okay. Steph, do you want to come in before I move to a vote?
Thanks very much, Chair. It was just in relation to Councillor Eccleston's point regarding the Dunchurch crossroads and traffic concerns. As you'll be aware, this is part of the much wider Southwest Rugby allocation, and I was wondering whether Joe and Nick could possibly talk about the function of the Homestead link, which forms a part of that allocation and links very closely to this particular application.
Yes, I can just touch briefly on the excuse me, Homestead link, which we're working with Rugby Borough Council and Homes England at the moment, with the developers consortium at the Southwest Rugby site. to secure the homestead link, which will is predicted to address the traffic issues at Dunchurch Crossroads. So we have the ability to vet very closely the inputs into the modelling to make sure that they are acceptable and documented, so we can demonstrate that we've done due diligence on the inputs, so that when the outputs are presented to us, we can have confidence in them.
Okay, thank you for that information.
Through you, Chair, may I respond?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Steph. Yeah, and Nicholas. When is the spine road or relief road proposed to be built? I guess that's the question that everybody's asking, and I realise that it's going to impact that crossroads, especially or primarily, I guess, on right turn movements. There, it's not going to affect left turn movements. It's not going to affect straight on movements, because traffic has to get down to Banbury, and there's no other way to get to Banbury than straight across that crossroads. Okay,
Steph, do you want to respond?
Yes, of course. We've been working with the wider consortium, and specifically Homes England, who are the landowner in that particular area. Homes England are taking responsibility for the planning application for the Homestead Link. They're working on all the preliminary studies as we speak, and they'll be undertaking public consultation over the coming months. We're expecting an application to be with us in the autumn this year. So it's on the horizon, and they're looking to bring forward that piece of infrastructure. It's absolutely critical for the delivery of the Southwest allocation and to facilitate the other applications that need to come forward in that area.
Thank you. Councillor Cram, you did have your hand up. Have you changed your mind?
No, Chair. I'd just like to remind members we must consider what's before us and not what might be or what could be, but that we must consider this application on its own merit.
Yeah, thank you for that. And of course, this has been quite a comprehensive debate on the subject. Before we move to a vote, can I just clarify with Councillor Eccleston and Councillor Sanderson their grounds for moving refusal? Is it purely and simply visual, the loss, I can't even say it, the impact on the landscape?
It's SDC1, heritage, agriculture, use of agriculture, loss of agricultural land, and what was the other one? Well, it's those anyway. Yeah.
And violates DS8.
DS8. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
It sticks to better to have a good ground than a weak one. It's going to be its environmental impact on both the landscape and the local amenities. So it's very much about the environmental side of it rather than a catch-all.
Okay, so environmental impact on the landscape and amenity. The loss of it.
It's not in. I don't believe it to be compliant with the emerging SPD for in the local plan.
Right. Can I just clarify with legal that we've got all our points in a row before I move to a vote?
Thank you, Chair. So I've got written down and noting Councillor Sanderson's point around having strong reasons rather than a catch-all. I've got from Councillor Eccleston and Councillor Sanderson, it's not compliant with the emerging SPD and policy DS8 and its environmental impacts on landscape and local amenity, contrary to SDC1, and also noting the loss of agricultural land.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, you're happy that we've got that clear.
I am. What does Peter think?
Right, Richard, head of
fine. Yes.
Planning. wants to
No,
come in.
thank you, Chair. I know there was no real discussion about loss of agricultural land. I appreciate that is what members are, or Councillor Sanderson has mentioned. But obviously this is an allocated site, so obviously the principle of agricultural loss of land has obviously already been decided by the previous outline application that can obviously be implemented. So I just wanted to make that point so they were clear.
I think that's a fair point. We should delete that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, Sarah, would you just reiterate the grounds on which we are voting on refusal, please?
Absolutely. So I have noted down it's contributed to the emerging SPD and policy DS8 and policy SDC1 on the basis of its environmental impact on the landscape and local needs.
All right, thank you for that. Right, I hope members are now clear on what we're voting, and as it was moved for refusal first of all those who are all those who are supporting refusal, please raise your hands now.
That's 3 for refusal.
Thank you. Those against refusal, please show.
That's 9 against
Thank
refusal.
you. So hands down. And Sarah, do we now have to move to a vote to approve?
Yes, please.
Okay, so all those now voting to approve this, please raise your hands now.
That's 9 for approval.
And hands down, and those against approval should be 3.
That's 3 against approval, Chair.
Right. In that case, that application is approved. But before we move on, I think it's important to say that the committee did feel that they had made a decision on the previous application and that they were quite constrained by what was coming in on this one. So I hope that if the applicant and the developers are listening, that the points that have been made, which could help to mitigate the impact of raising the roof height, are taken note and that something will be done about that. And I also hope that the points that have been made throughout the evening about the traffic situation in the borough are taken note of, and that we can have some action going forward to try and improve the traffic situation around the borough. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5, advance notice of site visits for planning applications. Are there any?
No, we haven't got any more. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And agenda item 6 is delegated decisions from the 14th of January 2021 to the 10th of March 2021.
It's just for members to note. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think we've duly noted. So I'd like to thank all of the committee members for their input into tonight's debate on all of the applications. There were 4 major applications there, and I hope that those people who have been listening have appreciated the amount of work that has gone into those applications by our officers, and also appreciated the fact that we had some of our other experts on hand to answer queries tonight. I do thank everybody for their interest in planning, and by submitting written comments and emails, and would encourage everybody in the future that if you really do feel strong